Hey, I'm T.A. Charlie, and welcome to The Road to Concord with Professor Joe Bakanovic. Homeroom is on Rumble. You just go to Rumble and search the channels for The Road to Concord. It's one word. When you find it, you go ahead and you click follow. It might mean you got to set up an account, but it's fast, it's easy, it's free. I did it, you can do it. For those technologically challenged members of the class, you can also catch us on Facebook and YouTube. After the show, it's uploaded to Podbean, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and BitChute. Just look for The Road to Concord. You can go to the blog page, that's theroadtoconcord.com. That's where you'll find all your show notes, study notes, and handouts for the class. The phone is working. If you don't know how to call in, email us and we'll think about it. Finally, you can email a professor at joe@theroadtoconcord.com. He's a little slow, but he'll eventually get around to emailing you back. This show is currently mainly listener-sponsored. If you are interested in advertising your business on the show, please email us. With that said, we ask for your participation on a value-for-value basis. If you find our show of value to you, then you provide an equivalent portion of your labor and treasure through the donate link on the Road to Concord blog page, the show description on Rumble, and in the comments on the other streams. And thank you to all of you who have and will support this show.
Good morning. Welcome to the Road to Concord. Today is Tuesday, May 19th, 2026. I am your host, Joe Bakanovic. We will be continuing in our study on Genesis, beginning in chapters 21, and we'll cover to chapter 22 today. It's the birth and near sacrifice of Isaac, as well as some other important things that we'll cover. Real quick note, I do not have Natasha or Charlie with me today. Natasha, she got overcome by events last night. Charlie's still out of town. Yeah, Annie, come supervise your daddy. Annie being our youngest miniature schnauzer. So the net effect is I'll try to keep an eye on the comments on the board, but I may not be able to catch everything. My apologies if I miss something. Just bear with me. I'll try to get to it. So we are in the NASB 1995 edition of the scriptures. And I'm starting here in chapter 21, verse 1. This is then, and I'm editing in we've replaced Yahweh with the Lord. I don't like that. So most of you know I edit this in. So Yahweh took note of Sarah as he had said. And then Yahweh did for Sarah as he had promised. So Sarah conceived and bore a son to Abraham in his old age, at the appointed time of which Elohim had spoken to him. This was back when they were sharing that meal at the Oak of Mamre. Abraham called the name of his son, who was born to him, whom Sarah bore to him, Isaac. Now, this might seem a little, more words than you need. I'm starting to realize... Okay, real quick. Some of you know that I'm studying now a book that argues that the Bible is Hebrew philosophy, as well as Yahweh's word. And I'm starting to understand that it doesn't change anything I've ever taught you. It just explains what I've been seeing in the scriptures and why I've been seeing it. And it affirms that, in my opinion, I'm on the right road with the way I see scripture. It's explaining in detail why Charlie and I say yes. Which is it? Is it this or this? And we'll say yes. I'm starting to get this in even better form. And it has to deal with the stories. The stories and the way they're told are actually philosophy. It's a form of arguing philosophy, a worldview. And it's connected to very much to the nation of Israel. Not necessarily the physical nation, but the people, like the Cherokee Nation, doesn't matter where they're living, they're still Cherokee Nation, that type of thing. Nation of Abraham, nation of Jacob, nation of Isaac, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm starting to understand that these stories are very important. And it goes back to, if you've never seen the episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation, where they met the people, the alien people that talked in analogies, allegories to other events in their history, that's exactly what the Bible is doing. And it tries to reason with us through these stories. And you've probably already sensed that there's something more behind your scriptures than you've realized. And that's what I'm finding out. That's what this is. The author of this book just formalizes it in a way that, well, it speaks to me more than it might you, because it's formal philosophy. And that's boring for the average person. And I know that. But as soon as I get done with the book and I get it down to where I can explain it, I'll bring it to you. So it's nothing to worry about. It's just that right here where it says, like, Abraham called the name of his son who was born to him. Well, it's because he has another son. Okay. And he's going to have more after this, who was born to him, whom Sarah bore him. So in other words, let's make sure we understand which son, the son of promise, not the son of slavery, of bondage, which would be Ishmael, because Hagar is essentially a servant woman. She's under bondage. So that's the son of bondage. Also the son of essentially sin, because this was man trying to do for Yahweh what Yahweh had promised to do himself. And I'm jumping forward and hearing the New Testament talk to me here about it, Book of Hebrews and all. So Isaac is born. Then Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, as Elohim had commanded him. Now, this goes to something else I've been realizing. That's the circumcision is not part of the the Noahide laws, rather. The laws that apply to everybody, Gentile and blah, blah, blah. But here we see that certain, what we think of as laws, certain teachings, certain guidance, certain requirements that Yahweh gives his people, they pre-exist Moses. A lot of them do. And we kind of miss them. And they're being alluded to here in the book of Genesis. And there'll be more. We already know that there's clean and unclean. We found that out when we were reading the story of Noah. We already know that, you're not supposed to do murder and things like this. And we're already starting to see what happens when we have inappropriate sexual relations. It's going to set up things in the storyline, that you're going to end up with lots to incestuous lineages that are going to cause Yahweh's people trouble in the future. The Canaanites, same way through Ham, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of the things that we're going to find codified in the law of Moses are already being taught to us through the story, what happened and what it led to, why it happened and why it led to this. So these things lead to bad outcomes. These things lead to good outcomes. The storyline is arguing with us. And when we get to Exodus and Leviticus and Numbers and Deuteronomy and all this stuff, it's going to codify what we should have already learned. So the story is the general. It's the abstract lesson. What we're going to get in the law of Moses is the particular. That's how you apply the abstract principle to a specific incident or a specific circumstance or example. And this is how you codify the law. Well, there are a lot of things that are not covered in Moses' codified law that are, or at least should be, understood through the storyline, the abstract idea conveyed by story rather than by logical argument like we're used to in the West, through a logical reasoning explanation of why we should or shouldn't do something. So instead of giving us a formal thesis, we get stories and we see who did what and why they did it and what were the outcomes. And we're supposed to take those stories and reason. Okay, well, inappropriate sexual relations for the wrong reasons rather than trusting Yahweh leads to enemies of Yahweh. Okay, so we don't do this for that reason. It's also going to show you that the bloodline lineages are important to Yahweh for whatever he chose. He works through specific bloodlines to do certain things. This is all being set up here in Genesis, especially in this chapter and the next. So Abraham circumcised his son on the 8th day. That's a pre-existing law, even before Moses. It says, now Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. This puts Ishmael at roughly 13, 14 years old. Sarah said, Elohim has made laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh with me. And she said, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age. Now, this is a different type. This is a specific type of laugh. So I went to my interlinear Bible. I'll blow this up the best I can for you. And I looked and said, Sarah, laughter. Okay, so I'm going to click on this, and it gives me Strong's 6712. I wish Charlie were with us today, because he would better be able to explain this for us, but he's out of town. I'm going to do the best I can with this. This is sekhoke, or sekhoke. It means to laugh or to scorn. Now, in this case, I think it means to laugh with. Like, this is a funny thing. You know, she's past childbearing age, probably past menopause, and she ends up having a child, just as Yahweh promised. It's one of the reasons we know he's Yahweh. And down here in the lexicon, it denotes overt laughter that can range from jubilant delight to derisive scorn. Now, which way do I think this is going to be taken in our scriptures? I think it's going to be delight, because who would have thought something like this would happen? Now, pay attention to what's going to happen in a little bit. I think there's a juxtaposition there's some Hebrew wordplay going on, and it's kind of lost in our English, and we'll get to it here momentarily. So back to the scriptures, verse 8, the child, Isaac, grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast on the day that Isaac was weaned. Well, that's a big step in a child's development. A lot of children back then didn't make it that far. So Sarah turns against Hagar. Why? Now, Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian. Now, why not just say Ishmael? Well, Hagar is the bondservant, the slave woman. Her son, she's an Egyptian. It's not necessarily that she's a Gentile. It's just that she's not of Shem's lineage. So she's not of the family line. So and it continues, whom she had born to Abraham. So Ishmael was born to Abraham. He's mocking. Okay. And therefore she said to Abraham, drive out this maid and her son, for the son of this maid shall not be an heir with my son Isaac. All right. This is important. We're looking at inheritance. Now, we don't know how long it's been since the birth. It's after he's been weaned. So that could be up to 2 or 3 years. Well, it's probably definitely after the point where Isaac has learned how to speak. Otherwise, mocking him wouldn't make any difference. Well, I went and I looked 21:9 and saw Sarah, the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, scoffing, mocking. A lot of your Bibles will say laughing. So I looked this word up. And this word is sakak or whatever. Well, I'll get to something in a minute here, but it can mean laugh, laughed, make sport of, caressing, jesting, mocking, play. It's the same root word as laugh. And if you'll look right here, and I bounce back and forth to here, you see that the only thing that changes for them is the vowel markings. It's the same root word. What changes is the vowels. And Charlie has explained to me that this probably means that Ishmael was mocking or scoffing or more than just making fun of Isaac, especially given the reaction that we see from Sarah. She says, therefore Sarah said to Abraham, drive out this maid and her son, for the son of this maid shall not be an heir with my son Isaac. So in other words, not only is he not going to get the right of the firstborn, he's not going to be an heir at all. In a sense, Sarah is telling Abraham to divorce himself from the lineage of Ishmael, to divorce Ishmael from the house of Abraham. In their culture, that's pretty much what's going on here. Shun him, so to speak. Verse 11, the matter distressed Abraham greatly because of his son. Abraham loved Ishmael. He was his son. In their culture, it's not unusual for a man to have multiple wives. So he would see no difference between his love for his son Ishmael or his love for his son Isaac, especially since in the humanly form, in the fleshly form, Ishmael is the firstborn. This is why Abraham asked Yahweh to bless and do everything through Ishmael instead of Isaac. This firstborn son is a big deal in their culture. So, but verse 12, it says, but Elohim said to Abraham, do not be distressed because of the lad and your maid. Whatever Sarah tells you, listen to her. For through Isaac your descendants shall be named. Okay. Now, there's a lot of ways to read this. It could be that, okay, eventually Isaac, and then we'll name him Jacob, and then Israel, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Or it could be through the name Isaac, your descendants shall be named. This is going to lead us smack into the battle between Ishmael and Isaac, or Isaac and Ishmael. In our study on Islam, that little article I've posted in those show notes there on that study that we're doing on Thursday, that's what's at the center here. This is going to lead us to the war between Islam and Yahweh's people, the Judeo-Christian people. And again, it was brought about because of not fully trusting Yahweh and waiting on Yahweh. So this is in blue because this is prophetic. And the dealing with his name, Isaac, that could very well be, there are a whole bunch of different people that have a name that comes out to the name Isaac. We'll be dealing with that specifically in our book, The Scepter and the Birthright. We'll get to that in other studies. But Saxons is one word, and Saxon is also a derivative of another word, Sakea or whatever, that's a derivative of Isaac. So there are a lot of people who believe that we can trace the inheritance rights, the northern kingdom, Ephraim, through the name Isaac, lineagely through history. And there's good reason to believe that that is actually an accurate way of understanding this. So verse 13 continues, and he says, and the son of the maid I will make a nation also, because he is your descendant. Yahweh will also do things on behalf of his faithful servants. So this is what's going on here. So Abram rose early in the morning and took bread and a skin of water and gave them to Hagar, putting them on her shoulder, and gave her the boy and sent her away. And she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. Now, let me see if I've got this up here. There's the wilderness of Beersheba. It's in this area down here. So that's the map that we have here. And we got Hebron, Gerar. We've already seen these areas. So they basically wander in the wilderness close by where they already are. All right. When the water of the skin was used up, I keep messing with this. She left the boy under one of the bushes. Then she went and sat down opposite him about a bow shot away. For she said, do not let me see the boy die. And she sat opposite him and lifted up her voice and wept. So she's mourning because she figures they're going to die and she doesn't want to see her son die. Elohim heard the lad crying. And the angel of Elohim called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, what is the matter with you, Hagar? Now, the parts that are in green, pay close attention because this is going to show up even in our English. So Elohim heard the lad crying. And the angel of Elohim called, not Elohim, the angel of Elohim called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, what is the matter with you, Hagar? Do not fear. We hear that verse all the time in Scripture. For Elohim has heard the voice of the lad where he is. So we've got two Elohims here. Then it says, arise, lift up the lad, hold him by the hand, for I will make a great nation of him. Well, previously, Yahweh's the one who promised to make a great nation. See, up here, Elohim, God, but Elohim here said to Abraham, do not be distressed Elohim hears the lad crying, sends the angel of Elohim. And then the angel of Elohim says, I will make a great nation of him. It's prophetic. And then Elohim opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water, and she went and filled the skin with water and gave the lad to drink. This is akin to saying Yahweh and the angel of Yahweh. And in this case, the angel of Yahweh is claiming to do things that Yahweh said he would do. Now, a lot of people will say, well, that's just nothing more than Yahweh's messenger doing it because he's a servant of Yahweh. And that's entirely possible. But there are other places where the word of Yahweh and the angel of Yahweh and Yahweh all claim to do the same thing in the first person, not as a servant. They take credit for doing it, especially leading Israel out of Egypt. All three claim to have been the one that led Israel out of Egypt. And all three claim that the others were the one that did it. They give credit to each other. So you've got a plurality going on here. And yet, our Elohim is one. And the Shema, that basically, it doesn't say, hear, O Israel, your God is one. That's not what it says. It says, hear, O Israel, Yahweh, your Elohim, Yahweh is one. So in essence, it's saying Yahweh, Yahweh, Yahweh is one. Three Yahwehs, one. What you make of that, I don't know. I don't care. We're not arguing that. The point is, it shows up. The idea, the concept shows up in your Old Testament. You just got to read the stories very carefully. And this is one of the reasons Heiser tells us it's a good thing to read your Bible as a novel, like a novel, because the lessons are being taught in novelic form. So Elohim was with the lad, and he grew, and he lived in the wilderness and became an archer. And he lived in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took a wife for him from the land of Egypt. So she's going to take a wife from her native country, Egypt. Well, real quick, before we go any further, we've got two possibilities. This is the wilderness of Paran, or where we're told where it's believed to have been. This is in the eastern side of what we think of as the Arabian Peninsula, over here in this area. Down here, Sinai and all this stuff. And this is the city of Paran, which is opposite. The wilderness of Paran's up here. The city's down here. So what we want to do with this, I don't know. But apparently it seems like they left. Because see, Kadesh Baram, this is just south of where they were hanging out before. So I think they migrated south. And let me show you something. We'll come back to this one. Here's something I wanted to show you. Territory of the Ishmaelites and Amalekites. The Ishmaelites. This is the nation that Ishmael is going to become. It fills this area down in here. This was part of Egypt at the time, what we think of as Sinai. Up here is Israel. The whole Arabian area. And we see where his sons are going to eventually settle. So up in here, this is Israel in the Promised Land. This is the Sinai Peninsula or whatever. This is the Arabian Peninsula. And this is the area that Ishmael's people are eventually going to settle. His sons. It's going to be important to us as we continue. All right, we're going to want that when I come back. So let me leave this here. All right, covenant with Abimelech. Verse 22. Now it came about at that time when he's driving out Hagar, that Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his army, spoke to Abraham, saying, Elohim is with you in all that you do. So they don't know at this time. He's not known as Yahweh. Okay, at least not specifically. Because remember, Moses is told, your fathers didn't know me by this name. But they are aware of this Elohim, this God, if you want, and that he's great. And these non-believers necessarily, pagans, or at least people not of the people of Yahweh, other folks, what we call Gentiles, they're aware of Yahweh's existence. So they say, Elohim is with you in all that you do. Now, therefore, swear to me here by Elohim, by by his God. They're fearful of Abraham's God. So they want him to swear by his God that you will not deal falsely with me or with my offspring or with my posterity, his descendants, But according to the kindness that I have shown to you, you shall show to me and to the land in which you have sojourned. So he's going to take care of the land as well. They're going to remain friends, bread covenant type stuff, folks. This is a big deal in their world. Whoops, didn't want that. Abraham said, I swear it. So Abraham takes a vow. But Abraham complained to Abimelech because of the well of water which the servants of Abimelech had seized. And Abimelech said, I do not know who has done this thing. You did not tell me, nor did I hear of it until today. So Abimelech is saying, I wasn't aware that this had happened. So Abraham took sheep and oxen and gave them to Abimelech, and the two of them made a covenant. So there's probably a blood covenant here. They probably split the animals and walked between them. Then Abraham set 7 ewe lambs of the flock by themselves. Abimelech said to Abraham, what do these 7 ewe lambs mean, which you have set by themselves? And Abraham said, you shall take these 7 ewe lambs, female lambs, from my hand, so that it may be a witness to me that I dug this well. Therefore, he called the place Beersheba, because there are 2 of them. That's where the 2 of them took an oath. So they made a covenant at Beersheba, and Abimelech and Philco, the commander of his army, arose and returned to the land of the Philistines. Abraham planted a tamarisk tree at Beersheba. They plant trees often as a witness, as a sign. And there he called on the name of Yahweh, the everlasting Elohim. So he praised Yahweh. And Abraham sojourned in the land of the Philistines for many days. All right, well, we're going to need to do that. But then that's what this was about. The land of the Philistines. It's this whole region area here. See, it says geo-regions of Palestine. Palestine, the Philistine area, is more than just what we think of it as. It's a general region. So Abraham lived in this area here, moved around a little bit. He's a nomadic herdsman. So he's going to bounce around a little bit. And we'll be here next we see this. So let me drop that down. We're in Genesis 22. I'm going to take our break here just a little early, if you don't mind. And we'll take 3 minutes. We'll play Charlie's favorite little dance tune here, the one he used to like before we replaced it. And we'll see you in 3 minutes, and we'll cover chapter 22. I've got a video of Charlie dancing to that. I'm going to have to turn it into a clip that I can put up and play, kind of like down in the corner. Mostly for Mrs. Boatwright, one of your classmates. Chapter 22, verse 1. Now it came about that after these things, so this is after Abimelech and Philco and the covenant, and Abraham's been in the area of the Philistines for a while, that Elohim tested Abraham. Yahweh tests us, folks. He does test us. And it's not so much because he needs to know who we are. He already knows our heart. The test is for us. It's for us to see who we are, who we really are. And said to him, Abraham. And he said, here I am. So Abraham answers, here I am. And he said, take now your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the land of Moriah. Now stop right here for a minute. Only son? I thought he had a son, Ishmael. Remember what I told you, that for all practical purposes, Sarah was telling Abraham to shun Ishmael and make him not a family member anymore? I'm not saying that that's what this passage implies, well, or is saying, but it does imply this. Take your son, your only son, because at that point, Ishmael's no longer his. He's been booted out, even though they're still related. Kind of been booted out. And it's in go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains, which I will tell you. All right, I want to stop here real quick. Moriah is going to be very important to us. Moriah is right here. You see this little area here? Mount of Olives, Mount Moriah. Oh, yeah. Well, it's known by another name. Mount Moriah is the Temple Mount, folks. It's the place where Melchizedek offered sacrifice to Elohim. It's the place where Abraham offered Isaac. It's the site of the threshing floor of Araunah, the Jebusite. That's the threshing floor that David buys. And that's the place where Solomon built the temple. Solomon builds the temple over top of that threshing floor. That threshing floor, it is believed by many, will become the site of the Holy of Holies. The threshing floor is flat, and it's built on the top of a mountain. So Mount Moriah is, well, it's kind of important to us, as you see. All right, we'll dump through that and go back to the scriptures. This is where Yahweh tells him to go. So Abraham rose early in the morning and saddled his donkey and took 2 of his young men with him and Isaac, his son. Now, we're still thinking Isaac is young here. He's at least 3 or 4 years old, but now he's able to come and he's going to journey and carry wood and everything else. Rabbinic tradition tells us that Isaac is at least late teenager, if not in his early 20s at this point. The scripture doesn't tell us how old Isaac was, but it gives us some hints. He's going to be old enough to make this journey with Abraham and his servants, and he's going to be old enough to at least carry the wood necessary for a burnt offering. So that's not just a little bit of wood, folks. That's going to be a bit of wood. I mean, not enough that, somebody can carry it and all, but anyhow, the point being, we don't know how old he is, but there's been some time here. It says, and he split wood for the burnt offering and arose and went to the place of which Elohim had told him. On the 3rd day, there's a refrain that we're going to see a lot in scripture. Abraham raised his eyes and saw the place from a distance. Now, this is going to be a typology. Whereas Abraham is going to offer to sacrifice his son to Yahweh, Yahweh is going to sacrifice himself and his son just outside of Mount Moriah, still on the mountain, but at Golgotha in the future. So this is a typology. The story is meant to show us hints of what is yet to come. Verse 5, Abraham said to his young men, stay here with the donkey, and I and the lad will go over there, and we will worship and return to you. Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac his son, and he took in his hand the fire and the knife. Took the fire. Yeah, they're going to have a little basket that's covered so the wind can't blow it out, and they keep smoldering coals in the fire, inside that little clay pot basket. They call it taking the fire. So the two of them walked on together. Isaac spoke to Abraham, his father, and said, "My father." And he, Abraham, said, "Here I am, my son." And he said, "Behold, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham said, "God will provide for himself the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." So the two of them walked on together. That's prophetic right there. Elohim will provide for himself the lamb, the Messiah. So this is looking forward to the Passover. This is looking forward to the crucifixion and the resurrection. Verse 9. Then they came to the place of which Elohim had told him, and Abraham built the altar there and arranged the wood and bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Abraham stretched out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of Yahweh called to him from heaven, and said, "Abraham, Abraham." And he said, "Here I am." Okay, now this is very reminiscent of the angel of Elohim talking to Hagar. It's parallelism in the story, only this time it's a little more specific. Moses is probably writing this book originally, so he's filling in the proper name of Yahweh. So he's telling us the angel of Yahweh called from heaven. And the angel says, "Do not stretch out your hand against the lad and do nothing to him, for now I know that you fear Elohim." So the angel knows that Abraham fears Elohim, since you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. Well, Abraham doesn't think he's sacrificing Isaac to the angel of Yahweh. He believes he's sacrificing Isaac to Yahweh, but he's not withholding Isaac from the angel of Yahweh. Right now, we know now that the angel of Yahweh is Yahweh. There's no other way to properly doctrinally interpret this. So the angel of Yahweh is Yahweh. How's that work? Because here the angel is talking as though he's separate from Yahweh. I hope you're starting to see this is in your scriptures. If we read this as a story meant to teach us philosophy, a way of life, and an outlook on the world, a worldview, you're going to be forced to wrestle with how the heck can Yahweh and the angel and the Devar all be Yahweh but not be Yahweh? So when somebody comes along and tells you there's nothing in the Old Testament that even hints at the Trinity, it's right here in Genesis, in the beginning. It hints at it, it just doesn't explain it. Well, Yahweh has this tendency to explain himself as time progresses. Noah probably didn't know Yahweh the same way Abraham did. Noah wasn't Yahweh's friend. Yahweh ate with Abraham, taught Abraham a little bit more about himself, but he didn't tell him his name. And then when he meets Moses, he tells Moses, "Well, hey, they were my friends and everything, but they didn't know my name. Now I'm going to tell you my name." And then when he has, in the form of the Messiah, when he has the Last Supper with his apostles, he tells them, "Hey, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father, and now you're my friends. You're no longer my servants," etc., etc. As some people call it dispensationalism. I don't particularly care for that. I like as the covenants progress. As Yahweh makes a covenant with his people break it, Yahweh comes back and restores it. We call it a new covenant. Well, there was a covenant with Noah. Well, it would have been a new covenant with Abraham. And then the old Abraham covenant is going to be an old covenant to Moses. Moses is going to be the new covenant. So now we're under a new covenant with Messiah. It's a preceding procession of covenants. And in each case, the Yahweh explains more and more about his Shem, his nature. He tells us more about himself, reveals more about himself. But if you're reading the story, there are hints of this already in the Old Testament, right here in the book of Genesis. And it's not just once. It shows up repeatedly over and over again. Verse 13, then Abraham raised his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in the thicket by its horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered him up for a burnt offering in the place of his son. That's typology as well. The Messiah will die in place of us. Abraham called the name of the place Yahweh will provide. As it is said to this day, the mount of Yahweh will be provided. Now, this, not quite what I thought it meant. I went to the interlinear and called Abraham the name of the place that Yahweh will provide. So I clicked on that right here, Raha, and it says advise, appear, approve, behold, certainly, consider, discern. So to see, literally or figuratively, in numerous applications, I went down, okay, let's go to the lexicon, because I don't do the BDB like Charlie. That's kind of beyond my abilities. I want to see what the lexicon tells me, because that tells me how it's used by the people. You see, this is a complicated word. Spans the full range of seeing, like Yahweh sees in Scripture, from the simplest act of looking to the highest revelatory vision. Its frequency, about 1,306 times, makes it a foundational thread binding narrative law, poetry, prophecy into a unified testimony of Yahweh's knowledge and self-disclosure. So Yahweh will provide might not necessarily be the way. It might better be said Yahweh sees. So why would Yahweh see? Yahweh saw Abraham's faith. Yahweh saw Abraham's obedience. And when he sees, he provides, he responds. I can get provision out of that. Don't get me wrong. I see that. But I think it's bigger. I think there's more to it than what the English translation has suggested. Verse 15. Then the angel of Yahweh called to Abraham a second time from heaven and said, by myself I have sworn, declares Yahweh, because you have done this thing and have not withheld your son, your only son. Indeed, I will greatly bless you, and I will greatly multiply your seed as the stars of heavens and the sands of which are on the seashore. And your seed, well, let's stop there. The angel is once again declaring himself to be Yahweh. Well, we know that later on the word of Yahweh will declare himself to be Yahweh. So the angel and the word are the same person. Except they're not. There are going to be other places in the scriptures where they both appear at the exact same time in the passage, and they call each other Yahweh. You can't be the Devar and the Melech of Yahweh at the same time if you show up in two different people or beings or forms or angels or whatever. So if you show up in physical form 1, 2, and one of you is called the word of Yahweh and the other is called the angel of Yahweh, like I said, I'm going to hammer this home. I'm not talking to you about a trinity in the sense of the Mormonism or Gnosticism or anything like that. No, I'm talking about something. It's a mystery of Yahweh. There's 3 Yahwehs, but they're one Yahweh. And that doesn't mean that they're one in essence or unison. They always act together. I mean, it's one. The Holy Spirit and the word of Yahweh and the angel of Yahweh and the Messiah, they're all one. They're all Yahweh. How that works, I don't know. But he's an infinite being. I don't know. But I know that this is the only way using a logical term, this is the only way I can justify the texts. And by justify it, I'm saying make them make sense without creating a contradiction. All right. Now down here it says, all your seed shall possess the gate of their enemies. Now, that's plural. All your descendants will possess the gate of their enemies. A gate is a defensive fortification. So your seed all his descendants will eventually possess their defenses. But there are other ways to read this too. A gate is an entrance or an exit. If you look, and we'll cover this more in our study on the scepter and the birthright. But if you look at the world today, most of the gates, the land passages, and especially seafaring passages, through which all commerce, through which the lifeblood blood of the world flows, are controlled by descendants, well, by Judeo-Christian peoples, or people that once were Judeo-Christian, either the United Kingdom or the United States of America. Even the Straits of Hormuz are now nominally under control of the United States. At one point in time, we controlled all of it. We're actually starting to lose control now. We had the Panama Canal, we had the Suez Canal. There was a point in time where people who professed a belief in the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob controlled all of the commercial gates, but also as well all of the fortifications of their enemies. They end up taking over those who conquer them. I'm not telling you that this is how this prophecy should be understood, but I'm telling you that I can show you in history that that's a legitimate way to understand that prophecy. And then 18, it says, in your seed, all the nations of the earth shall be blessed. Again, it's plural, if I'm understanding this correctly, not singularly. But even if it's singular, in your seed shall possess the gate of their enemies. Their enemies. Okay. Well, what if the second verse is talking about the Messiah, in my opinion, but also at the same time, it is talking about Yahweh's people will be a blessing as well. Not just the Messiah. How would all of the people be a blessing apart from just the Messiah? From whence has come capitalism, the thing that everybody loves to hate, but at the same time, the thing that has lifted most of the world out of poverty. Even the third world benefits from that. Well, that's a Judeo-Christian thing. And from whence has the eradication of slavery come? Well, that started in England and spread to America. We have abolitionists. Slavery, by and large, was ended by Judeo-Christian peoples. From whence does the rule of law under constitutional government, republicanism, come? Again, from Judeo-Christian peoples, from the seed of Abraham. The world has been blessed by this, but also blessed by the Messiah. So are these passages talking about Yahweh's people or the Messiah? And I would answer you, yes. Does it cause heresy for me to think of it that way? No. Both interpretations bring glory to the Father. Does it cause contradiction of sound doctrine? No. At worst, you're only seeing part of the story. But both ways, you're still relying and glorifying in and on Yahweh. So, because you have obeyed my voice. So the angel says that when Abraham obeyed, he was obeying the angel, not Yahweh. But Abraham thinks he's obeying Yahweh. That's what the story tells us. So Abraham returned to his young men, and they arose and went together to Beersheba. And Abraham lived at Beersheba. Now, this next part's going to be important to us. Let me get this where we can see it. We hate lineages in our lifetime, in our culture, in our world. We shouldn't. Now, it came about after these things that it was told Abraham, saying, behold, Milcah has borne children to your brother Nahor. Uz, his firstborn, and Buz, his brother, and Kemuel, the father of Aram, and Chesed, and Hazo, and Pildash, and Yidhlaf, and Bethuel. Bethuel became the father of Rebekah. These 8 Milcah bore to Nahor, Abraham's brother. His concubine, whose name was Rehumah, also bore Tabah, and Gaham, and Tahash, and Maacah, whatever. Why is this important? Genealogy of Nahor. Once again, Bible Hub. I'm not going to read this. Noah's descendants, Noah's legacy, culture and theological significance. That's what I want. Theological significance. The genealogy of Nahor is not merely a record of ancestry, but serves a theological purpose in the biblical narrative, the storyline. It underscores the continuity of God's plan through specific family lines, highlighting the importance of lineage in the fulfillment of divine promises. Nahor's place in the genealogy emphasizes the interconnectedness of the patriarchal families and unfolding of God's redemptive history through Abram and his descendants. Why is this important to us? Let me explain for you. Hold on just a second here. Excuse me. Okay. When Yahweh or Yahweh's prophets prophesy over an individual, that prophecy is oftentimes, not always, context will help us, but oftentimes, most oftentimes, going to follow the descendants of the person over whom has been prophesied. Remember, blessings are prophecies. What? Yes, blessings can be prophecies. They don't have to be, but they can be. When Jacob, rather, as the man Ishmael, prophesies over his children, he blesses them, but he's prophesying at the same time. Moses is going to do the same thing over the descendants, the tribes of Jacob. So if Yahweh or the prophets or, prophesy or bless somebody, if it's a far-reaching prophecy into the future, that bloodline must continue. If it doesn't, then the prophetic promises or blessings are going to follow somebody else other than who Yahweh was meaning for them to do. In other words, you can break a prophecy if you can't maintain the bloodline. This is one of the reasons bloodlines were so important to them back then. It's why they were so adamant that family lines continue. So we're going to go here and we're going to take a look at some of this. Terah, Abram, and Nahor, these are brothers. Milcah. So Milcah and Remuah, she's a concubine. So this is going to be like Sarah and Hagar. Well, the concubine is going to give these 4 children. Milcah and Nahor are going to give us these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Kemuel is going to give us Aram. But Bethuel is going to give us Rebekah. We all know who Rebekah is, right? This is a longer, more extended lineage. Up here, Hagar, Sarah, and all of these folks. But we're going to start seeing, like Jacob, we're going to have Leah, Rachel, Bilhah, Zilpah. These are concubines up here. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. All right. Rebekah is going to end up being in the line. She's going to marry Isaac. So any promises given to Terah or to Nahor or to Abraham are going to be able to stay in line, even Haran. But Terah and Abraham, their promises are going to continue because the lineage, Rebekah has been joined to Isaac. So now anything promised all the way down to Isaac and Rebekah is going to continue through Jacob and Esau. But you need to keep the bloodlines together. Well, Jacob is going to end up marrying Leah and Rachel, sisters. And later, that's going to be outlawed. We're not going to have sisters. Rachel is the one that Jacob actually wanted, going to give us Joseph and Benjamin. These are 2 very key players in the line of prophecy. But we're also going to get Zilpah and Bilhah, handmaids. We're going to get Gad and Asher. But we're also going to get Dan and Naphtali. Dan. It's not necessarily going to. These tribes are not, they're either not major players or they're not good players. These are the handmaids, the natural wives, Leah and Rachel. Leah is going to give us Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah. These are going to be important to us, Issachar and Zebulun. But we're going to find as we go forward that marrying all these people, keeping them together, this is important to us. See, like here, Sarah is going to be with Abraham, and Milcah is going to be in this lineage here, Haran, Nahor. These bloodlines are not given to us for nothing. They're not nothing burgers. This is one of the ways that we trace the prophetic promises and the lineages and the things, the proof of Yahweh being Yahweh, because he's maintaining his prophecies and the blessings of his prophets over other peoples. So, and yeah, these can, like Sailor Sun says, these can contain curses as well as prophecies. The blessings over Ishmael and over Esau, they're blessings and they're prophetic, But from the way we read them, they would be curses. They're basically going to say that Ishmael and Esau are going to be wild ass of men, always at war with people. One of them godless and one of them an apostate, other than the true religion. Esau is going to basically be godless for the most part. Doesn't care. So this is where we're going to leave off in our study of Genesis with chapter 22 for today. We'll try to capture 2 more chapters next week. Sometimes it won't always be possible to get 2 chapters in a week. We'll do our best. Trying to gobble up, a chapter every half hour during the show. Hopefully, so far, I'm not even going to begin to think that I'm going to cover everything that should be covered in Genesis. I'm not. I'm going to miss things. I guarantee it. Promise you I will. The thing I hope that I can encourage you to consider when you're studying your scriptures, even I've got a tendency to do this. I'll grab something I haven't read before and I'll take and run with it. Oh, this is new. It's great. Because I've been trained and because I've made it so much a part of myself, I will, even though I love it, I'll go back and test what I thought I knew before I started reading that. It's my way of staying grounded and anchored against scripture. It's my way of being led astray. It's one of the techniques I've used. So if you're comparing other teachers, that's good. There's wisdom in the counsel of many. Just make sure you test whatever this new teaching you might find is against what you thought you already knew and understood. And make sure you test everything against the Bible. And I'm not telling you not to listen to, but the ones who are telling you something never heard before, they hid this from you before. This was never revealed. They didn't want you to know. Folks, that's Gnosticism. It's Gnosticism. There's nothing new under the sun. Listen to Solomon. Paul tells you you've been told everything you need to know. There are some things that have been lost to us that we can find again if we're duly diligent, the cultural storylines and cultural connections and significance of things in our scriptures, how they spoke and communicated. Yeah, we can recapture that. But Yahweh hasn't hid anything. He's stacked multiple layers of meaning in his word, and you see more and more of it as you mature, just like a child sees. A little child does not see the adult content in the Looney Tunes cartoons. The adult does. So as you spiritually mature, you see more and more of what's always been there. But all these voices on the internet claiming and hyping to be something new or something different and talking to you like the ShamWow guy, those are the ones to test 3 times before you accept anything they say. Now, there might be truth there. Yes. Test it 3, 4, 5, 6 times. Be careful with them. If they're tickling your ears or luring you astray with shiny, bright, shiny objects or really cool, tantalizing things that you think you found in your, be careful with them. I'm not saying don't listen to them. Hear me clearly. I'm saying be careful. Please. Now, it's just probably me. But the more I've opened my eyes and started looking around a little bit, the more and more I don't want to be that way. I don't know if you've noticed, but I've been trying not to sensationalize most of my titles of the shows anymore. I don't mind sharing my understanding with anybody who wants to hear it. It's what I'm supposed to teach my understanding to the body. I know that I'm not the only one that sees and understands the scriptures, and I know I see and understand it differently than others, and that we both are teaching the same thing from different perspectives. One of us has the leg, the other has the trunk, somebody's got the tail, somebody's feeling an ear, the elephant, the blind man. But I don't really want anybody studying with me who isn't serious about it. For your sake and mine. For your sake, so that you don't waste your time. For my sake, so that I don't hurt you in the process. And if you haven't been studying with me for a while, you may not understand what I mean by that. But if you've been with us for any length of time, you know darn well that when somebody first encounters me, their first inclination is usually to think of me as a heretic. I'm an acquired taste for a reason. But it's also been my experience that most of the time, if people take the time to test what I'm teaching them and go back and check it against their scriptures, they end up going, oh, well, I may not agree with him, but he's not totally crazy like I thought he was. And that's all I'm asking. I hope we edify you. We build up your faith, your confidence in what you do know, and that we start to expand how well you can defend your beliefs, your understanding of the scriptures and why you cling to them. Hopefully you cling to them. I appreciate your time. I'm grateful for it. If you have anything to say to us that you think we might need to hear, feel free to email joe@theroadtoconcord.com or admin@wewhoarelost.com. I'll get to you. Give me a day or two, but I will get to you. Otherwise, if you like what we're doing, hit the like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the bell when you do that so you know when we come out with new content. Share the show if you feel led to do so. If you have the means to do so and you want to help us stay on air, please consider going to one of the donate links. It uses PayPal, but I don't like Patreon or PayPal, but Patreon's a heck of a lot of work for me to set up and maintain. PayPal is setting up a campaign, and it comes with certain promises, guarantees for you as well. It's easy to turn it off. So up to you. I'm not going to sit here and beg for money. I don't want to hear people do that, and I don't like doing it. But it is how we stay on the air. And thank you that who are keeping us here. You know who you are. May the Father bless you, who support us in secret. So until we see each other again, tomorrow, Jeremiah, Thursday, Islam. We're going to meet Muhammad. Friday, back in the scepter and the birthright. We're following along with Jeremiah's mission in the house of Judah. Good stuff. Hopefully we'll see you all 3 days, but if not, until we see you again, y'all stay safe. Take care. Yahweh bless. We love you. Y'all we'll see you later. Let me see how I end this stream. I haven't done this in so long. I don't remember how to end it. Here we go. I think. It's not playing. I can't make it do it. Oh, well, we may have to go out some other way. I'll be darned. Charlie, how do you do this? Here we go.